I'm going to be talking about change. And I'm not talking about a new hairdo or a new pair of shoes, although that is change. Today we're going to be talking about change with the intention of growing spiritually. So I'm going to define some terms, and they're probably going to sound familiar because I generally repeat these in all my teachings. That spiritual growth is growing from a self-centered, limited, selfish mentality to a more expansive, inclusive, unified consciousness. So that is what we're here to, that we're going to try to achieve or to expand. It's not really an achievement because expansion keeps on going. And the journey really is more important than the destination. One of the foundation concepts here is that we reap what we sow. And so it's not so much about change as it is influencing the direction of our change. All growth is change, but not all change is growth. So, and I've certainly proved that in my own life many times. So it's important to be aware enough to know what the effects of the changes we're making is having on our consciousness and on people around us. We talk a lot about this concept of we reap what we sow, and pretty much everybody knows this. I can pretty much tell. I know a lot of the people in this group today. I mean, and I know that everybody here understands what you reap what you sow means. It means whatever seeds you sow. If you sow an apple tree, you're not going to get pears. If you get on the road to Los Angeles, you're not going to end up in New York. You're going to end up in Los Angeles every time. So the question kind of is, why is it that we don't sow better seeds? I mean, we know the consequences. And I'm not going to go into some kind of psychoanalysis here of why we do what we do. But it's enough to say that we spend a lot of our time trying to change other people. We spend a lot of our time avoiding change. A lot of the suffering in our life is caused by resisting change. And one of my goals in life is to rid the world of unnecessary suffering. So we want to get to a place where change becomes our friend, and we no longer fear it. So here's a quote from Rumi. He said, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself." And that is what we're going to be talking about today. So, and this goes back to we reap what we sow. Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." There's a reason he said that. Every attitude we have, every word that we say, every action that we take creates ourselves in a certain way. Okay? And it influences the world around us. It really, something that was really kind of upsetting to me, and it wasn't because I'm particularly tied to one thing or another. I'm not actually, in this case. But we just went through the most kind of nasty, dirty, dishonest, corrupt election that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I'm 65 years old. But the thing to keep in mind is not so much, the Republicans in the room are going to think I'm talking about the Democrats, and Democrats are going to think I'm talking about the Republicans. I'm talking about everyone involved in this mess. Something we have to keep in mind, and I've mentioned this before, if we're calling people fascists, we're creating ourselves as fascists. If we're calling people racist, we're creating racism in the world. If you don't want to be a racist, if you don't like racism, don't be a racist. If you don't like fascism, don't be a fascist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But I did want to get that off my chest. Um, so the thing is that we have the life that we create. Okay. So if you want to know what you're doing in your life, look around. Jesus said, "You will know them by their fruits." Right? And we will know ourselves by our fruits. We don't know ourselves by our intentions. We should know ourselves. A friend of mine used to say, we judge ourselves by our intentions, but other people judge us by our actions, and that's very true. But a lot of times, our actions and intentions do not match, and we reap what we sow in our actions. Um, so So growth is always expansion. And like I said, all growth is change, but not all change is growth. So what we want to do is come to a place of understanding ourselves well enough that we can consciously influence, bring awareness to it, to consciously influence the direction of change in our life. Um, like I said, we all understand this reap what we sow thing. So how come we don't do it? Okay. And the reason is pretty simple. Growth, change is uncomfortable. Okay. It takes strength and courage to change. It takes strength and courage to to examine ourselves with a critical eye. Okay. We also often have this laser sharp vision when we're criticizing others, but our biggest problem is that our eyeballs point outward and we have a hard time looking at ourselves. And one of the things, there's a process I'm going to be talking about here today, a 4-step process. And it begins with getting honest. And I know people are probably, oh, I'm already honest. But we all have our blind spots. And the hardest part of this process is that self-examination part of the process. Change often feels like we're losing something. It also feels like we're risking failure. And we live in a world of people, and that's good, because if we were intended to do this by ourselves, we'd have a planet to ourselves. But so we're meant to have other people around us, And me personally, I don't mind really being a failure, but I'm really hesitant to have you notice that I'm a failure. So it seems like we're taking a risk when we change, and we are taking some risk, because we often are leaving old things behind and bringing on new things, and that doesn't always feel good. Matter of fact, it almost never feels good. All growth happens outside of our comfort zone, and just sort of resting in our own ideas and attitudes and way of life is really, really comfortable. Okay, and most of you know that I work with addicts, and they get comfortable living in these really ridiculous, painful situations, but they recreate it over and over again because that's their comfort zone. And that's really true of all of us to a lesser degree. Yeah. One of the concepts I think I want to shift here is that, wonderful things happen when we look within ourselves, and most of us here probably understand that. I kind of want to, we have kind of this attitude that God is on the outside trying to get in, when what we need to use in this situation is that God is on the inside trying to get out. And that's kind of the way I want to look at things. So there's a 4-step process here that I want to talk about. The first one is getting honest. The second is embracing peace. The third is communion. That's communion with light. And the fourth is expression. Okay. So I'm really, because, I don't have a whole lot of time, I'm only going to try to really go into one of these things in depth, and that's getting honest. And I'm really not going to go into that in depth, but I'm going to touch on some of principles. So just quickly, getting honest, one of the fruits of being honest is peace of mind. I know people who have been meditating for 30 years and still struggle to become quiet. If you're struggling to become quiet, it's because you have things that are still in conflict within yourself. Okay, we're still, so we have to run those tapes over and over again and trying to resolve those things. This dishonesty is what it is. Okay. So one of the first benefits of honesty is peace, peace and serenity. There's a great line in the Course in Miracles that I use a lot. It says, "The peace of mind experienced by the teachers of God is largely due to their perfect honesty, where no thought, word, or action contradicts another." That's the level of honesty I'm talking about. Okay, another benefit of honesty is stress almost disappears from your life, and and just the sense of freedom. Um, it's amazing as I become progressively more honest, and there's still areas that I'm not honest in. I'm still in the process of being a human being, and like I said, we all have our blind spots, and I still like to spin things to make to make it sound better for myself. A friend of mine likes to say, we like to look good, and we don't want to look bad. Um, we tend to spin things, and that's definitely dishonesty. So there's a sense of freedom that comes with honesty. Okay, so now we become honest, and because we become honest, we become quiet within ourselves. Okay. So the next thing is embracing peace. In other words, we have this peace, and by the way, it was a surprise to me. It was like, what's going on here? And I actually had to ask somebody, and they said, "Oh, that's peace of mind." and and that's kind of seemed weird to me. Okay, so one of the first things we need to do in embracing peace is become comfortable with being quiet. Okay? It was very uncomfortable to be quiet. It's kind of like an oxymoron, but that's actually how I experienced it. Someone actually told me, Jeff, it's okay not to have any thoughts. That blew my mind. Because I had never in my entire life had no thoughts in my head. We think that the thoughts are our mind, and that's a mistake. And that's also a level of honesty. When we realize that our mind is something other than the thoughts, that actually opens up a whole new world to us. Okay, so communion. And what I'm talking about here is communion with the one, the light, the God, whatever word you want to put on it. It has no words, so it doesn't mind what we call it. So this is usually experienced in meditation the first time. And then once we habitualize sort of being in that quiet space or being in that expansive space, and we get to where we can accept that, then we can start carrying that out into our lives. And that brings us to into our physical conscious lives. And that brings us to the last stage, which is expression. And expression is allowing the consciousness of the light to control our words and actions. Okay? One of the things I have to say about this, it is really fun. A lot of people see spiritual people as really serious and we're always meditating and all that kind of crap. It's not like that. When I'm in tune with the light, this kind of joy bubbles up, and it kind of comes out in all kinds of ways, and I feel connected to everything and everybody, and one with the world. It's an amazing way to live, and this openness, and openness means, not only being open to what the world offers and what people have to offer, etc. It's also openness from the inside out. Okay, in other words, expressing myself, expressing my view of life, and sharing that with other people, and as a way of connecting. Okay, let me check the time. Okay, I'm not doing that. Okay. And in this, we kind of have to step away from, I always had a relationship with God where I was trying to understand God or trying to define God. And one of the shifts that has to happen to get into this kind of change is that I have to stop defining God and start experiencing God. So God is not to be defined, it is to be experienced. Um, and the reality is, once you kind of become conscious that God is really everything, then all experiences become God related. Um, so what we do is we go within ourselves, we become, and by the way, while I'm still talking about honesty, um, it is very, very helpful to have a trusted, objective observer. Okay. It is very, very difficult to become honest by yourself because I'll just get stuck in my own little loop, and my own opinions will verify my own opinions. um, so there's kind of a rigorousness to life that that has to happen in order for me to become honest. Okay. I have to kind of quit defending myself. You know, um, I have to look everything up. You know, even when it contradicts what I think I already know. Matter of fact, it's especially important. If, um, you know, I need to make sure that if I'm going to tie myself something, that it is factually true. And I'm talking here on the physical realm, factually true. Um, and that's really hard to do. I mean, you know, you may hear that and say, well, of course, of course. But the reality is that this is a really difficult process, because we move through life built on assumptions. The nature of the human mind is to believe whatever we hear over and over again. Okay? This is something that Goebbels understood, back when he was the Nazi propaganda guy. He said that, if you tell a lie once, it's a lie. If you tell it 1,000 times, it's the truth. you know, and we have that in our society, just like they have it there. But we have to kind of watch ourselves, okay, that we're not just repeating to ourselves what we think we knew from yesterday or 10 years ago or 1,000 years ago. A lot of the preconceived ideas that we bind ourselves to were written literally thousands of years ago. Um, that's just something to consider. That doesn't mean they're not valid, okay? But I'm saying that you need to call everything into question, including your own nature. Okay. One of my big problems is that I was too lazy to do God's will. you know, I was a lazy student. We are all students, and I was a lazy student. I wouldn't do the work to do the self-examination, to verify the things I believed. What I've actually come to understand after decades of doing this kind of stuff is that all my beliefs are wrong. I'm going to say that again because it's kind of a shocking statement. All of my beliefs are wrong in that they always fall short of the reality of the light of God. Okay? So if I start from the premise that my beliefs are wrong, and by the way, I always have beliefs. I don't think we can function without beliefs. But well, maybe actually, if you're living in no thoughts, then that's no belief too, I guess. But anyway, so beliefs are one of those things I have to change and have to let go of in order to expand. Remember that spiritual growth is always expansion. Khalil Gibran wrote in the Prophet. He writes that spiritual growth is not like a blade of grass growing upward. It's like a lotus blossom. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much deeper into because I'm going to run out of time. But I'm not going to go too much deeper into this. Betty asked me a few months ago, if I would do a workshop. And of course, we were getting ready to move and stuff, and there's no way I could have done it back then. But that might be something I'm willing to take on now. But because this process, there really is a process here, and if you involve yourself in it, you will always you will always free yourself of your preconceived ideas and barriers and fears that hold us back and from changing. And you involve yourself in that expansion and expression. And by the way, all these things, all four stages can exist simultaneously. So I can be in the process of getting honest. I can be in the process of embracing peace. I can be in the process of communion, and I can be in the process of expansion all at once. And that's actually the way life is designed. So, so I'm going to wrap up once again. I'm going to repeat the quote from Rumi, because that's kind of the mindset that I want to leave you with today. That is, yesterday I was clever and I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, and so I am changing myself. Thank you very much.